Wisconsin conference in February to the Holy Land.
Are you really?
Yep.
Well, take me with you, man.
February the 8th.
You're going back to the Holy Land, you said?
I am.
Ooh,
And then in April,
I'll
it's
never
gonna be
make it.
Egypt.
Never make it.
Then Egypt in April.
Mm.
Yeah.
I'll just enjoy the pictures.
Well, you know, it's one of the things of life that I enjoy.
Uh-huh. Oh, I can't say as I blame you.
Thank you. Gene, how are you?
Doing well.
Scoot
Back
up.
from the coast, checking on my mother.
I saw that. Things looked okay.
All things considered, it's going about as well as it could.
Okay.
Lewis and I leave in 2 weeks. 2 weeks from yesterday morning for Colorado.
Well, that'll be nice.
Wow. Sounds nice.
Mhm.
Will you go out there singing Rocky Mountain High, Colorado?
There you go, Dad.
In a lower octave. Rocky Mountain low.
Rocky Mountain Low, Colorado.
I was born under a wandering star.
Okay.
Gene, your cam is kind of buffering.
Yeah, I get that a lot.
Okay.
Sure.
We're going through a real bad thunderstorm right now, so that may be impacting something. And again,
Ooh,
it'd just be my crappy computer.
I saw Heather on here a minute ago.
Yep.
I still see her.
I see her. Hi, Heather.
She's like not on my screen for whatever reason. Hang on. Oh, that's because I'm on Facebook. Hang on.
How are you, Heather?
I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm wonderful. Hello, Patricia.
Hey y'all.
Hey, how y'all doing?
Hey.
Well, I'm doing fine.
Y'all doing well?
I'm
What are
doing.
y'all doing well? Just well. Thank you very much.
How's Ewan's today? Ewan's okay?
You's okay? You's okay.
Hudson's fine.
I know I've told Gene this before, but there was a really old gentleman at one of the first churches that I served, and I was from Atlanta, and I didn't know Southernese, and I'd moved to Mississippi. It was rural Mississippi. We were having one of those outdoor after church covered dish on the lawn kind of things, and I went up to the guy in the wheelchair and I said, "Well, how are you doing today?" And I shook his hand, and he said, "Poorly, but in table order." I had no idea what that meant. I think it meant he's not doing very well, but he can eat.
Pull me
Well,
up to the table.
Bert, did you carry him somewhere?
I don't know what that means.
Let me carry you over to the, what is it called? Shop One right here. I'll carry you over there.
Yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, glad that you were here, and I'm particularly glad to see my brother Mike, who I love so much. And there he is, man. There he is.
I'm back.
The man.
That's
You're the
right.
man, Mike.
And I'm so glad to see you, and
Thank
all
you.
of you. And I see Kia is also here,
Hey Kia.
and
Yeah.
she and her radio voice.
Greetings, everyone.
Hey, Kia.
We're coming to you live
We're
from
coming to you
W.
live from WKXRP.
Don't touch that dial.
We're live at
For the
6:35.
sights- for the sounds of the 70s, join us tonight.
And the morning DJ on WOLD.
Okay, I'm going to share something with you. You ready?
Go.
Okay, let's see if this works. All right, and I'm going to move this out of the way, so hopefully it won't be blocking too much of anything, I hope. I may have to move this a little, huh?
It's fine. I can even see that one.
Can you see that that top arrow simply has the word attack in it, even though it may be covered up right now?
It's me.
I see
Yeah.
the ACK.
ACK.
You can see everything else, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So we have Patricia to thank for this diagram. It was a part of her doctoral dissertation. She studied an awful lot of important people in very diverse areas of study. One of the persons that she studied, and she got me hooked. I read the book too, and we got to talking, and it was by Howard Thurman, and who was a theologian and pastor who was the most powerful influence, I think, on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s life, and his philosophy of nonviolence, and which is not the same thing as pacifism, by the way. And she was writing all this stuff down, and we were talking about, what's at the core of this? And she said, it's fear. And I said, well, what if your group process started with that? And so she started running with the ball. And, I kept talking to her about fight and flight. And she said, well, what about when you just fold, or like when you play possum? And so it just evolved out of Thurman's ideas, his philosophy of response to attack, domination, and injustice. And how do we move from fear that drives our impulse, our animal impulse to fight or fold or flee, toward something different that is maybe more highly evolved and less reptilian and reactive, and you can think of any example that you want to, from your relationships in your family to corporations to even a nation. But I think it's applicable across the board, but I thought we'd play with it for a minute. And I guess you noticed that maybe you read the diagram explanation afterward. I sent it some of you, I don't know, but
Yes, I read it.
okay. So under fight, the idea under fight is hate and violate. Those are the main things there. And under fold is complicated. Let me do flee first. Flee is to separate or evacuate. And I'm reminded back in the 60s in 50s and 60s, when there was sort of a mass exodus of African Americans from the South, and they all went to Chicago or somewhere, And then, but down in the South, they were also had this idea of separate but equal. So you had segregation. Well, these are forms of fleeing. All right. Separate, evacuate. Fold is a little more complicated. It's not just playing possum, but one of the things that Thurman pointed out, was that you can imitate your dominating population and treat others the way that they treated you. Like if you're happen to be an African American pastor, you might treat your congregation as if they were slaves or servants. So you end up passing along by imitation the very things that are dominating you. The other thing you can do is manipulate. You can learn what triggers and what doesn't trigger the dominating population, and you can play them and move them and avoid getting them angry, keep them happy with you, yesa, nosa kind of thing. But this doesn't just apply to the issue of race that Thurman was so concerned about back in the 50s and 60s. Patricia turned it into a group theory, where she began with the group spheres. Her groups come together and they're strangers, and they don't know one another. And what are their fears, and can they name them? It's actually a good place to start with group process. And then when they hurt one another's feelings, which is inevitable, then you can name the fight, flight, and fold, and maybe move towards something else, which might eventually involve transformation of the group into a more intimate group. I know she wants to talk right now, so I'm going to shut up.
No, listening.
What do you want to say about it before we ask others to share about your diagram.
Yeah, I mean, so I found it really helpful in group process when you have a group of strangers coming together, like when we first started and we didn't know each other and we were just learning. A lot of times fear show up as anxiety. You feel like, do I need to say anything? Am I talking too much? You start questioning yourself. You have fears around who's in the room. Can I trust these people? So, I mean, they're very legitimate questions that we have when you meet people, strangers, no matter what the context might be.
Confidentiality.
Yeah, it can be a church that you're
Anything.
joining for the first time. You know, it might be a new job.
Can I trust these people?
Yeah, I mean, it can be going in the grocery store. So I think, you know, so when people get to a point of opening up, when they feel that they can trust a little bit and you venture out. But I feel like all these different components of this theory or this diagram that we're talking about is significant. And I think in honoring where people are, it's not that one is better than the other, or if you fold mean that you are less than, or if you flee that you're less down. There are reasons for that, and we all do it at certain points
We
in
all
our
do.
lives. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So the hard part is the ones on the outside, right? And you don't skip the fight to get to open up and forgive and love. You move through the fight by talking to the person about your anger
Yes,
and you're feeling violated and why.
yes.
It's the and withholding. You know, you stop manipulating or imitating, and personal stories and sacred stories are ways of standing up and saying, "I'm, you know, this is who I am. You're not seeing me.
Mhm.
I'm not going anywhere. You're going to have to see me. If you see me, you're going to have to hear my story." And speaking up on the right is telling the truth and exposing the lies of the injustice that one, like if someone's telling lies about you, I mean, it doesn't have to be anything complicated like separate water fountains or something like that, or you don't get equal justice under the law for the same crime. It can be something simple as someone taking your stuff or someone accusing you of something you didn't do. But to tell the truth and to expose the lies without fleeing, without separating, without evacuating, but staying. In my theology, I call that standing. In this theology, I would call it a turning and facing. You know, with curiosity and with courage, facing the accuser, the attacker, the dominant person, or the injustice. Making any sense here? That's loud. Oh, it's Jonah. Hey, Jonah. Glad you're here. Can you mute? Do you know how to mute your microphone? Thank you.
Here it is.
Jonah's my friend from South Georgia. She was with Gene this morning too.
Oh, hi, John.
Ah,
See you. It's been a while.
yes.
So, I guess my two questions were on the email that I sent to you. One is, can you think of examples of how this works that you've seen or that you can imagine? Or can you think of biblical examples of this at work? And just generally speaking, what are your questions or thoughts about the model?
This is an incredible model. I've never seen this before.
Well, that's because it's not published. She just made it.
Yeah, this is amazing. And it helps you to kind of have a tool to be able to look at and name things about the way you deal with certain situations yourself, kind of be able to stand above yourself and look at, okay, what was I doing in this situation? And you can, one of these is going to likely fit whatever you were experiencing and how you dealt with it. And to just have that as a tool to name, oh my gosh, and help you see how to move towards standing up or, you know, speaking up and all that. That is fantastic.
FYI, I think it's sort of passé now. I think brain research has gone beyond this, but I think it's still generally speaking true that when we are frightened, when we feel fear and anxiety, um, the part of our brain that lights up is a very primitive part of our brain. They actually call it the reptilian brain. It's the brain stem back here, and in shape, function, and chemical output, it's identical to the brain of a snake or an alligator or a frog or whatever.
Yes. Amygdala, right?
Yes, yes, I think that's correct.
Amygdala.
And fighting and folding and fleeing is all that they know how to do. They don't have any options. In
Right.
fact, I think we're the only creature on this planet that because of our cerebral cortex here in the front, our frontal lobe, that can stop, as you said, Mike, can pause and say, wait a minute, I don't have to fight, I don't have to fold, I don't have to flee. I feel these feelings, I feel the fear, I know what I want to do right now, but I have a choice.
Yes.
And this is what someone doesn't do when they get out of their car with a tire iron and bash in the windshield of the car that cut them off. That's completely reptilian.
Yep.
That's road rage is completely reptilian. It's a good example of not using your human mammalian brain.
And this is great timing for this because after 2 years of COVID, people being locked up for a couple of years, and mental illness has been rampant across, I think, the whole world, not just the United States, but and this is a tool that kind of helps explain. We need to connect with people and how to move toward standing up, speaking up, whatever. It can save your life.
It can. Which brings to mind, Mike, one of the first things that might get denied, and that is that I'm afraid. There's a part of me that doesn't want to admit that I'm afraid. Like I was walking yesterday, instead of watching the Braves game, which I knew they were going to lose, I went walking in the park, deep into the woods, and essentially exposed. There are animals back there like wild boar. There could be criminal elements back there. I don't know what's back there. And I realized that I'd been walking most of that day with a certain tightness in my stomach and alertness of what's around me, to the point that it seemed like it was unnecessary. And I wondered, how much do I need that? And I forced myself to stop and breathe and let go of that knot, and admit, okay, I'm being ridiculously unafraid right now, and there is an option, and I'm okay. I can stay alert without being so tense.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an example from my life of just trying to use this diagram to start with the first admission, which is that we're afraid of various things pretty much all day, all the time. It just depends on how acute it is and whether we're conscious of it. Being conscious of it and admitting it is the first step, because once you've named it, then the fear may be expressing itself as a more specific emotion.
Right.
And then you can get closer to what you're really feeling. That's what she uses a feeling wheel to help people name their feelings.
Yeah.
But fear is sometimes anger is a fear response. For me, I think it is for other people too.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's defensiveness. And one of the
It's secondary though. It's a secondary response to hurt.
yes.
You get angry when you feel hurt by something.
So the attack comes, the domination comes, the injustice comes. It hurts you.
Yeah.
And you're afraid of what you've lost. You're afraid of what they might do to you. You're afraid of how bad are they going to hurt you.
Yep.
And so you start having these impulses to run, to play possum, or to grab a gun or a stick and fight.
Right.
Yeah. And that's funny to talk about in a CPE group or a church family, but I mean, these feelings are pretty primitive and they're not rational.
But I think you can use them in almost any area of your life. I mean, I'm thinking back to when I was a child and I was bullied for the color of my skin, and I fled because I felt like I couldn't fight. You know, it was all about it was my response to this injustice that I feel attacked at this time, and so I fled. Sometimes I just ran away or I just folded. Um, but now, if I am bullied that way, I will fight. I will speak up for myself. I would act in different ways. I think at different points in our lives, we respond based on the circumstance.
Yeah, I
And
have
what
I have
we're feeling.
unresolved pain from younger years when instead of standing up for myself and fighting, I folded or fled, which
Mhm.
in some of those situations might have been the smartest thing to do, given the fact that I was outnumbered.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I was faster than they were.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
those guys were in reptilian mode and they weren't ready emotionally for me to say something to them like, you know what, when you treat me like a non-human like that, it really makes me angry. And they're gonna go, all right, boom, thanks for not running. But
Yeah.
in a group of adults, another response might be possible. You might, if you speak the truth to someone, if you stand up to someone, you know, if you speak the word that, hey, I'm not going anywhere, and you stand your ground, you might, you might get a different response if the
There's a
person's not
reason.
a reptile.
There's a reason they came up with that saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can never harm me. I mean, you feel like you're in a literal physical war at times when words are flying.
Yeah.
And to be reminded that you can use words, and that will actually could possibly create progress if they are not stuck, like you said, and just come out and punch you in the face.
Well, I mean, what if this is true? What if those bullies live in such a world of unconsciously live in a world that's so steeped in fear that the only way that they can feel safe is to attack the people around them and bully people around them and make them fold or flee and hopefully not fight, because they don't really want to fight unless they just enjoy hurting people. And there
Right.
are some sadists out there like that who go get drunk at a bar just because they want to have a fight tonight.
Right.
But I don't think those are normal. I don't think that's like the norm. I think most kids are so wounded, so afraid that their self-protective behavior somehow they earn brownie points with their peers if they can make them laugh by picking on you,
Mhm.
and then you fold or you flee,
Yeah.
and that's funny too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that's how you raise your social status, how well you can abuse someone and get away with it.
Yeah. Get ranks in a gang.
Yeah.
I believe that fear can be taught to a child. Okay, it can be taught to a child, either instilled in an adult. I'm going to give you an example. I had a coworker who moved from Connecticut, who moved to Atlanta, and one day we were talking, and I said, "Well, I'm going to Atlanta." Oh, oh no, you don't go to Atlanta. I said, "Why don't you go downtown to Atlanta?" Because I was told that it's scary to go down there. And I said, "Have you ever been? Have you ever seen Atlanta? Have you ever toured Atlanta?" "No, I'm just going to." "No, I haven't." And so she had this fear just based on hearsay. And that really floored me. I was just so surprised. And so, like you said, sometimes it's instilled in you just from other people telling you. Sometimes it's taught in children when they're young. You got to be scared of this person because of this, that, and the other. So it's amazing where fear can resonate, where it can come from.
Very
Well,
true.
It looks like that arrow down there on the lower left, domination. You can let people dominate you with the things that they say. They tell you that something is scary and you believe it and you get afraid. They tell you something's wrong and you believe it's wrong. You can dominate people like that and they don't even know they're being dominated. You can become codependent on someone to tell you what's best for you and never grow up. And that's a terrible position of fear to be in, because everything is riding on whether you can please that person and do everything right. And you can't.
Patricia,
Mm-hmm.
first of all, can I show this to my pastor?
Sure.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, because we've been doing something similar to this,
Okay.
but I think he would love the diagram.
Great.
But second of all,
Make her-
as far
make
as
her famous.
Oh, please.
as far as the fear goes, I understand fear. I think I've told you I had a very abusive mother, and I never knew what to do when I knew she was coming into a room. I didn't know whether I should just go to my room, go outside, and the fear starts. And then the anxiety steps in. And you don't know what to do with that fear when you're little.
Mhm.
Do you tuck it away? Do you just, make believe she's not there, or what do you do? So I lived like that for years. But then when I left home, all of that was gone. I didn't fear too much of anything. And then in my first marriage, there was a whole lot of fear. He was an alcoholic, and you never knew when he was going to come home and what he was going to do. I walked out of that one. So I guess that would be calling flee. I walked away.
It's not
And
always the wrong thing to do.
no,
Right.
that's very true. That one wasn't. My second marriage was good for a little while, and then it went to whichever direction it went to. When I got down here, I went and seen a psychologist, because I think I emailed you about that, Bert, about this, that I had gone through all that. And we talked about the fear and the fleeing and the violating and all of that. And I learned just in a short period of time, I don't have to be afraid. I don't have to give up whatever I learned to be. I can still be me, and I can still, say what I want and what I don't want. And it's kind of helped a lot. I stand up for my rights more. I let him know, that I don't like that. So let's talk about it.
Or even saying, look, I've thought it through and I'm just not afraid of you anymore.
Right, exactly. And I'm not. I mean, you want to get up and go, because I got God, and he's my best friend, and he's not going to leave. So you do what you got to do. And that's my attitude today. Is it right? Is it wrong? I don't know, but that's how I feel. I've got more of I guess I'm climbing that mountain and I'm almost to the top of it. Almost.
Yeah.
That's great.
Mhm.
Yeah,
There
good for you.
maybe there's a spectrum, like with the fleeing, and maybe with the other two as well, fighting and folding, where we're talking on the one hand about the impulse to flee, just a mild impulse to flee, and you realize, that would just be childish. I'm going to stay here and work this out with her, or work this out with him. And then there's the other extreme, which is he's probably going to kill me tonight. I'm calling the police and I need help. That where fleeing is not really running away, it's preventing your own demise.
Right.
It's standing up, having the courage to even to stand up to the dominance. I
So the
mean,
way you
in
stand
that.
up is you get someone in to help you stand up to them because they're
Mhm.
so much more powerful than you physically, or maybe they have weapons.
Mhm.
You know, there are complexities here, but think of it just in terms of, you know, family relationships, church relationships, working relationships. You know, somebody says something that really makes you angry. You know, it's an insult of some kind, and you feel that fear of consequences if you say something to them, and so you hold your tongue, you know, or maybe you just swallow it, or maybe you set their purse on fire. I mean, there are lots of things you can do that aren't appropriate, but you know, beyond that, what can you do to overcome the fear of the consequences and reclaim your own personal dignity? And I think this was the word that came up when she was writing about Thurman that really grabbed me when I read it was, you know, the sort of the byproduct of this process of standing up, speaking up, and opening up is you regain your own dignity, self dignity, and
Amen.
sense of self worth, because fear tears that away from you.
Okay. Actually, that's what I was going to say. First, you would have to learn to accept yourself. And when you learn to accept and appreciate yourself for yourself, it's amazing how you see things in a different light. And one of the things, my husband was an alcoholic also. But one of the things when I went to the Al-Anon or meeting, that is the thing that was important to me was everything that was happening was not my fault. It's not me. That's his problem, and it's not me. And we have a tendency to blame ourselves. But when we have our self-worth, it's important. That self-worth is very important.
Yeah.
So you saw your self-worth. I'm through. I'm not gonna say anything
Yeah,
else.
so I've seen that in a lot of relationships where you're afraid of abandonment, and therefore you'll put up with an awful lot of blaming. It's your fault. It's your fault, and you'll take it, you know, because you're afraid that she or he is going to leave, and that fear keeps you imprisoned in the cycle of control, and that's not a life.
Right.
And in your own heart, when you realize that you do have self-respect, this is not all my fault. This person has a lot of problems, and I'm not afraid of them anymore. That's like the huge step to take.
One of the scriptures that we often quote out of context many times is God's not given us a spirit of fear, but of love and of power and of a sound mind. I'm curious about, how do you see that connecting to this, if at all?
It's perfect. I love it. God doesn't give us a spirit of fear. It goes along with the Johannine epistles as well. I can't remember if it's 1st or 2nd John, where it says perfect love casts out fear.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also reminded that scripturally, the opposite of faith is not doubt. The opposite of faith is fear. Faith is trusting, and fear is feeling unsafe. It's not trusting. This is not a trustworthy person. This is not a trustworthy situation, or I'm afraid that they're not trustworthy, or this place isn't trustworthy, you know? It's amazing to me how many students don't quit in the CPE process because it is threatening to come into a room with strangers and risk. And if you get your feelings hurt, the easiest thing to do is use old patterns, and you regress and you just quit and run away. You just quit. But they don't quit. They stick it out, you know, and they kind of work through some of this stuff. Now they're slow about it. I mean, they're beginners.
Yeah.
It's not like they're they're in residency. These are interns. First time they've ever done anything like this.
Yeah.
But it's amazing to me that more of them don't quit.
Because I think too, what I do as an educator is encourage them to, so there are two competencies that they have to meet before they graduate from the course. And it's about how do you give feedback, how you receive feedback. And so I'm like, this is a place for you to practice. It's okay to confront, even if you practice on me. If there's something that you don't like, once it's done in respect, you can say that. You can say what you need. You can, however, just practice confrontation.
Yeah.
And try to make it a safe enough place for people to say what they need to say in that environment. And then they get encouraged, and someone else does it, and so and
So
things like
somebody
that.
says, so somebody tends to repeat what other people are saying to help clarify what they're meaning,
Mhm. Yes.
And then somebody calls them on it and says, why do you feel the need to
Mhm.
repeat what everybody else is saying and
Yeah.
clarify what they're meaning? And then they go, well, I don't do that. And I'm really angry with you about saying something like that. That's not what I meant. And they have the initial response is fight,
Yeah.
defend.
Mhm.
But then the group comes back and says, no, wait, are you saying that's not accurate? And why the defensiveness?
Mhm.
And then they work, and then suddenly you've got a team working better together and trusting one another more because they work through the superficial trust that we all pretend to have
Yeah.
at first when we meet people.
Yeah.
Superficial trust is not real trust. And we pretend politely to trust, but we're very cautious with people, especially at first.
Yeah, and then you have people trying to protect one another.
And then for whatever reason, people, they get in the group and they decide, well, I'm going to protect that person from this person.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, I have a question.
Yeah.
So as I look at the arrows on the diagram, I mean, it looks like for each one of the fight, hold, fold, or flee responses, that it looks like is the idea to look at how that leads to the next step of either speak up, stand up, or open up. And then
You can go ahead.
I think the arrows point outward toward the injustice and attack and domination. And the idea is you're going to work on your own fear. You're going to work on your own reactive responses to fight, fold, flee, and own them. Own that I did that. Yep. I ran away, but I'm back. Or I folded, but I'm standing up now. And let me tell you what my problem with what you did. So the motion is outward from the heart. You start with accepting, dealing with, owning your own fear, moving through that, and then through your impulses to fight, and even through your actions to fight or fold or flee, toward opening up or standing up or speaking up, depending on what's going on with the outside attack. Yeah, it's moving toward the attacker and the dominator and the one who's being unjust.
so it
Motion toward them.
Yeah, and it forces you to, like, you're gonna face the fear rather than running from it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, so
I love it.
yeah, it works hand in hand. And this is not like in every single situation, it has to happen exactly that way. It may not happen exactly like that in terms of how the arrow may
It's
be
a
pointing.
model.
It's just a model.
Right.
There's some possibilities in there. So someone who might start with this being anxious and they fold, and they might not just go straight to standing up for themselves. They might flee first. They might, fight, so it might take them a minute before. So it doesn't necessarily mean that they will get there automatically to the next step.
Right.
Well, I see.
Yeah.
Go, Dale.
I really like your diagram. I mean,
I do too.
It speaks volumes to me. And one of the things that speaks to me through what you've done and what you present here is I can be in multiple places at the same time too.
Yeah.
I can fold or flee or fight, in the process of figuring out what I really need to do. And I think that's what you're allowing me to see with this diagram is it's a process that I can work through things to get to where I need to be.
Mhm.
Not anyone is exactly right at the same time or wrong at the same time, because you may be experiencing all three in a degree at the same time.
Mhm.
Then you look at how healthy that gets after you can, you know, I was talking to somebody earlier today, and he's just almost exhausted from his job. And I said, you know, I think what you'd love to do is just get in your car with a full tank of gas and drive away. He goes, you know what? That's exactly what I'd like to do. I said, but you know what? Eventually you'll come back home.
Mhm.
We all have these sense of fleeing or folding, but I think at some point when we start honestly accepting what we're experiencing, we grow through that.
Yep.
Would you like to try to use the diagram to as a tool for looking at a couple of stories about Jesus? What could I do that?
Sure.
Sure.
Okay, so
Yeah, and let me just say one thing, and I see this, you know, in my tradition as United Methodist, there's a lot of pastors that I know that would rather fold, flee, or fight instead of figure out some kind of resolution.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And that's called the appointment system. If you can't fix it where you are, you move somewhere else.
yeah, the
And the
appointed
same,
system is has its drawbacks for sure on pastors and their families.
oh yeah,
It's
yeah.
tough. It's tough.
And I think, and I think what this really helps me to see is that it'd be great in a pastor community situation where pastors could sit down and look at this honestly and go, I can work through some things that I'm dealing with right now, instead of saying to the leadership, move me somewhere else. Because if you move me somewhere else, it's going to happen all over again,
Mhm.
because you don't deal with it. You don't
Yeah,
grow
that's what I
through
was
it.
about to say too, Dale, that you can, I mean, I think you're right on there, and you can vacillate between them. Like there are times when you feel like I'm going to open up today, and I'm not, you know, I'm tired of fighting, I'm tired of running or fleeing. I'm going to stand my ground, and I'm going to tell you exactly how I'm feeling. Next week, it might be a different situation where you do not. Yeah, there are times when I speak up for myself and I say exactly what I'm feeling, and then other times I go quiet, and Burke knows when something's wrong. And I may not just come right out and say that because I'm processing, I'm a processor. So it might
Mhm.
take me much longer to say, my feelings are hurt, you know,
Mhm.
so I might not open up right away. So I might flee for a minute or I might fold for a minute.
Sure.
It doesn't
But
mean
you
that I
come back,
wouldn't, you
yeah.
come back and you might
Mm.
open up. So you can vacillate between
And
them.
you might
And
have let's say
Mhm.
you had 4 or 5 brothers or sisters, you might be in a totally different place, but on this chart with all 5 of them, but in different places.
Yeah.
You relate to them differently depending on the dynamics in the relationship and how much you do trust them and how much you are afraid of them.
Mhm.
yeah, if you are really fearful, you may be running hard from opening up. I mean, that's putting trust in people when you open up, and if you're not feeling trust, you know, that can be hard to get to.
Yeah. One of the major themes of a movie called Phenomenon that you may have seen with John Travolta is that um, this woman with 2 children, and John Travolta's in love with her, and she keeps saying no, 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 no to him through the whole movie. It's not the theme of the movie, but it is a theme in the movie, and she's convinced that just can't trust men. She just can't, and she was hurt too badly too many times, and so the movie was a part of her healing process of learning to open up and let John Travolta into her heart. And that process of letting someone into your heart can't happen if you're defensive with fear. And fear does like to put up those walls and protect that heart. But
Yep.
living with an open, unguarded heart is a hard thing to do when you're under attack. And there's some examples I can give you if you want them.
Is Shane still here with us?
There are several people who are here with us. They're just not showing up because there's a limit. There are a limited number of screens I can see at the top. If they spoke, I want to hear from them too. But I'm going to mention a couple of stories, 2 or 3, and see what you think. Um, when Jesus was in Gethsemane, he was praying to let this cup pass. He did so 3 times, and it would have been very easy for him to get away. All he had to do was to go up the Mount of Olives, 15-minute fast walk to the top, and then down to the other side into the darkness of the Judean wilderness, and he would have been safe. He also could have called on the people of Jerusalem to fight for him, or at least for his disciples to fight for him and save his life, and maybe even overthrow the Romans, but he didn't do that either. He said, "Who are you looking for?" And they said, "Jesus of Nazareth." And he said, "I am he."
Mhm.
And that's the first story. The second story, after they arrested him, they took him to Caiaphas's house for questioning, and he was asked about what are these teachings that you were teaching? He said, "Why are you asked?" Jesus said, "Why are you asking me? I've not hid anything from you or from anybody else. I've been teaching it in open where everybody can hear it. I've been teaching in the temple. Ask them; they know what I said." And the policeman thought that Jesus was being disrespectful to the high priest, so he punched him in the face. He struck him, and Jesus turned to the poor cop, turned and looked in his eye and said, "If I have spoken incorrectly, tell me what I said that is wrong. But if I'm speaking correctly, why do you strike me?" What do you think of those two, as maybe examples or somewhere in the vicinity of this particular diagram? Powerful stories, right? Gino, you out
But
there?
well, one thing, he didn't flee, he spoke up.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, Gloria, he did. Boy, did he. It makes if you think I'm implying that Jesus wasn't afraid or struggling, you would be wrong. Luke says his blood was mingled with sweat, and you only have that phenomenon when you were under an intense amount of pressure and stress. So he prayed 3 times. He's throwing himself on the ground. He does not want to die. He does not want to go through this. He is afraid, but at the same time, he chose, instead of fleeing and folding and fighting, he chose to stand and to speak
And to open up.
and to open up. And he didn't shut down. He stuck with, "I am who I am. The truths that I've said have been spoken out in the open, and everybody knows what they are."
I think that Patricia's resource is an excellent resource,
Yes.
just like what you're doing, Bert, with the stories you just shared, of taking this resource and going into scripture and the gospels and seeing how Jesus dealt with situations
And modeled it.
using her model. I think that is a powerful tool, not only for an individual, but even in a group setting of saying, here is Jesus, this is where he is in this model and what he's responding to and how he's responding to, as an example for us, how we can grow to be able to respond also. I think this is a tremendous tool.
It is.
And you're worth your weight in gold for drawing this. I mean, it's an amazing tool.
I've been trying to tell her to show it to people, and she's shy.
Thank you.
Patricia, you got to stand up. Speak up.
He who has an ear, let him hear.
Put your light on a lampstand.
She's afraid. She's afraid they won't like it.
What is there not to like? I mean,
Right.
So let's talk about how you feel about fear, Patricia.
Would you like to unpack that a little bit?
Yeah, how do you feel about that?
That's a good question.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
How do you spell fear?
But I think this model is an excellent way of opening up a conversation.
yes.
Not just as an individual, like for a pastor, but a conversation in committees and churches, a conversation in the idea of mission and ministry and how we can function better. I think this is one of the best tools I can see relating to helping people deal with issues and situations. It's just,
Absolutely.
It's
You know,
amazing.
one thing, Dale, about this we haven't talked about, and that is, sometimes you have churches who have people who like to dominate and
Yeah.
who spread rumors that are false and who attack the pastor. And so not only are we dealing with our own feelings of from the inside out of fear, but we might have victimizers in our own presence.
Yeah.
And this could be a tool used to expose that as well. We don't have attacking in our church. We are not going to spread rumors in this church. We are not going to dominate one another in this church. That's not the way it's going to work anymore. That's taking a stand as a pastor, right?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
But here's the fear also comes in when there are persons in the congregation who dominates, and then everyone is afraid of this individual or these individuals over here.
So they
and
let
then-
them have their way all
and they
the
let them
time.
have their way. They fold, they flee, because they don't want to be attacked. They want to be, the good person.
Keep the peace
Yeah, let's keep the peace.
at all costs.
Yep. Yeah. Rather than, and no one stands up to them.
Even when there is no peace.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's called being an appeaser. And it's like the person who is, let's see, an appeaser is a person who the tiger eats last. Think about it. An
Yeah.
appeaser is a person that the tiger eats last.
So we can use this model to confront people who are empowered because they're allowed to be in power.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and they like power. And on the other hand, there are some people who are used to power, so used to it that they don't consider that it might be experienced by others as domination, and it might be a real freeing, painful insight that, oh my gosh, I haven't meant it that way. I've just been trying to do what's right and do what's best. I'm used to leading. I'm and I'm good at it. And maybe I should back off a little, give other people a chance, listen to other perspectives. People can grow. There are some people who can grow. And there are some people who are just stuck in reptilian mode. And that's a whole different thing, because those are the people who that if you cross them, that they're going to throw a hissy fit. And nobody wants to be there when that happens.
Mm.
Of course, Gene wouldn't put up with that. Gene just stomps him on the toe and says, "Get over yourself." But the thing is that when you're a young pastor and you've got kids who are counting on you to do a good job, so you get a paycheck so that they can eat and go to school, you don't necessarily want to pick a fight with the bully in the congregation who is pushing people around. There's a line there that's difficult that you're afraid to cross. It's one thing, to be willing to move every year or every other year, but you pay the price, and your children pay the price for that too. So you're hoping, well, maybe I can just put up with him long enough to get, my 3 or 4 years in, and then I'll go. But what kind of ministry is that?
Yeah.
That's no fun. And people who are used to dominating and are unconscious about the way that they dominate, or maybe are very intentional about the way that they are unfair and lie and attack. I mean, what's the article, Clergy Killers, that we read, Gene, and studied so carefully? I mean, they even have a methodology that's predictable. If anybody wants it, we've got this article written by some guy, I can't remember his name, Kippinger or something like that, wrote Clergy Killers. There's some textbook dudes out there, and if they're in your church is in trouble unless all of you band together and understand what they're doing and stop them. But again, you can't do that if everybody's cowed.
Yeah.
If everybody's cowed, change can't happen.
Bert, I want to suggest too that Jesus even used I never thought about it until, this great presentation, but he used a very sophisticated, almost tactical model of doing multiple things in one interaction. And we could all think of several examples, but I mean, think when he gets confronted about the stuff at the temple and the cleansing of the temple. Well, that's one reaction. And when it's over, they come to him and they want to know, by what authority are you doing this?
Yep.
And then what does he do? He backs up, sets another trap, and they walk into that one. If you tell me by whose authority this, I'll tell you by whose
John the
authority that.
Baptist. Yeah,
And
was
so
John
he's
the
got
Baptist baptism
twice.
from God or from not?
Yeah, he's gotten them twice in one encounter with
Uh,
two different strategies.
Yeah, he didn't lose arguments. The only argument he lost on purpose, and that was with the Syrophoenician woman, as far as I can tell.
Well, and the one with Mama about the wine.
Yeah,
No,
well, one that was
maybe,
maybe.
maybe. Mothers are always right.
Well, think about there's a great story that we just looked at recently, Gino, in both of our studies and sermons, and the woman who rescued Jesus from an ambush at Simon the Pharisee's house. I mean, Jesus got to the door. He was invited to lunch after speaking, and he got to the door, and Simon, nor any of his servants, nor anyone in his household offered welcome to Jesus in, or provided water for his feet, or perfume for him to smell good, and
Basic hospitality.
kisses on his cheek, basic hospitality. They insulted the you-know-what out of him. What did Jesus do? He walked in and reclined right across the table from him. He took it. It's
How
like,
y'all doing tonight?
he's like, so what's up?
Howdy. Pass the chicken.
You chicken.
I didn't say ham.
That's the chicken, you chicken. Yeah, and it's like, so what? People insult you. Is that gonna, it's like, he's like, so what? That just shows you're a jerk. How does that reflect on me? I'm here to teach you something. I'm sitting down. Let me show you something about God. God hasn't given up on you, and neither have I, but you are a jerk.
Love it.
Patricia, I would love you to do this either in person or by Zoom with a clergy group. We just started last week meeting together, and this is right up the alley.
Man, clergy
If
need
you
this as much
If you
as
think
anybody.
about it,
Yeah.
How much you want for it? What's your fee?
I'm not charging anything.
That's funny.
I mean, my students are actually clergy persons and seminarians. So they do, I mean, some would get it from my groups, but I hear you, Eugene. Yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to.
talk.
Yeah, I've actually been not using my diagrams. The one I did on prayer, that prayer wheel I created.
Yeah, the prayer wheel she did is just as good as this. It's awesome. We should do that one time. But
Yeah.
here's what you can do. Since you all have like exploded with your positivity about this, what you can do is you can hit like and share on this Facebook video, and then after I get it uploaded tonight to YouTube, you can also share and repost that, and let people see this thing, because I really think it would help folks. And I don't know who we haven't heard from, because I can't see all the faces right up there, but Kia is out there, and I'm wondering about her. Who else was out there?
Heather was.
And Heather.
Heather,
Yeah, who
Jonah.
else?
Jonah.
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 Yeah.
Okay,
Gloria.
if any of y'all got something to say, we're moving toward the end of our time. I want to hear from y'all, if you will.
This is Kia. A lot of Jonah posted a lot in the chat, so you guys may want to just address some of her statements there.
Thank you. That's interesting, because I don't see anything
Not on Facebook, on the Zoom chat.
on the
In
Zoom
the chat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't done that before. I don't know what I'm doing. So how do I get this to be big again?
You want to stop sharing?
Yeah, I can stop sharing.
Yeah.
That will help.
Yeah, see that it's
There you go.
Okay, so there's some chats down here. Let me open those up. Yes.
okay.
Basically, like when you were the one they were talking about in the break room with the coffee maker. That's exactly right.
You
Confront the boss or just cry, of course. And then you can pray for them. But what if somebody in an abusive relationship, but if they walk out, their children, grandchildren turn against them and they lose everybody? There's a lot. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to lose out there. When you're in a situation like that. It's a really scary place to be. You feel so powerless and furious at the same time, and yet paralyzed because you think, okay, well, what's this going to do to my kids? Oh man, if I were in those kinds of, I can't say what I would do in a situation like that because I haven't been anything exactly like that, but a lot of people have.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a time to confront Jonah. There's a time when to walk away. It's like know when to hold, know when to fold, know when to walk away, when to run. And I think standing up for yourself is always, I think, a positive thing you can do. But there are times when you might want to. Each circumstance is different. There are times if you have someone who's in authority, like a boss or a supervisor or someone, it might be worth just telling them about what's going on. Sometimes you get yourself in trouble by taking it on by yourself. So I think discerning when to do what, when, and when in doubt, just check it out and ask. Maybe check it out if you're not sure, because you can actually set yourself up and you can get. I don't want anyone to get beat up, because you say I'm going to stand and fight for myself. That's not what this is about. It's learning how to do it, but knowing when to do it also.
Yeah, there are
Not that you can do it, not because you could do it, you do it at every opportunity. There are times when I'm just quiet and I don't speak, I don't say anything. I'm just praying about, how do I handle the situation? Do I need to say anything here for myself? And there's a time when I do speak up. I'm not asking any questions, but then there are times when I'm just quiet, I'm listening, I'm processing, I'm reflecting, and sometimes I consult. What do you think I need to do in this situation?
Yeah.
Or, so it depends. It all depends.
Also, if you're in a work environment, this doesn't work so much with a marriage or something like that, but in a work environment, there's a way when you have someone who is abusing you in a work environment, the way through that is to begin to document and record everything. Okay, because that's the way the truth is going to get out. If you don't write anything down, if you don't have any proof, it's going to be your word against their lie, your truth against their lie, then they will lie. So the more that you write down, the more that you document, the more that you photograph, the more that you are just diligent with following through on the abuse that you're getting that you can't fight back because maybe you're not in a position of power. This person may be your peer or this person may be over you. But the more you document, also, it may be important to find allies within the system with whom you can confide and consult that are going to be confidential and safe. That can be scary and risky too. But see, this is not fleeing. This is not fighting, in the traditional sense. This is outing. This is truth telling. This is standing up. This is showing I'm not going to take this. And at some point in time, all that evidence is going to be presented before somebody. And they're going that somebody's going to be accountable, hopefully, if your system's not, the mafia, and then they don't care. But some people don't want to go to the trouble of doing all of that kind of documentation, but it's absolutely necessary sometimes. And that's better than folding and being beat up every day and abused and taking it. Start writing that stuff down. Start turning on the voice recorder on your phone.
Yeah, and like Sheila said earlier, sometimes you have to flee. Just get away from the situation. It's just, sometimes it's worth that. Fleeing is not always a negative thing. It can be a positive thing. And knowing when to do that.
The writing may be therapeutic too.
Yeah, writing that stuff down does help. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And keeping that record and making sure, keeping all those emails. Do not delete the emails from the person who's bullying you. The texts, memos, whatever it is. I mean, this is a way of protecting yourself and standing up for what is right. And again, the thing that grabbed me about her diagram when I was reading the book by Thurman was this idea of recovering personal dignity. And once you start writing that stuff down, you feel a whole lot better about you, believe me.
Yeah.
Heather, what are you thinking about all this?
Did you say Heather?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, a lot. I had something happened a couple weeks ago where I had a major conflict with someone I really don't know that well. And my default is to stand and say what I have to say. And, it just occurs to me, and then your examples about Jesus is, when you make those choices, you have to find a way to be comfortable in those moments in that conflict, because the person that you're having the conflict with, they're not going to thank you for it. It's not that you're going to change their mind necessarily.
Yeah.
But it's, for me anyway, it's more about standing my ground, saying what I need to say. Of course, I'll think about it later and things, what piece of this did I own? What I could have done different, etc. But your diagram really challenges me to think about the fear part, because I'm a person that consciously decides every day not to make fear-based decisions, not to be that person, but it's got to be there at some level, or I wouldn't worry about the conflict and the way I handled it.
Right.
But are we unnecessary? Do we have our guard up unnecessarily and waste so many calories and so much spiritual and psychological energy? Do we do it too much? I think your question is perfect. It's like, do I really want to be that fear-based, or can I live more unguarded and still be okay? I can walk through the parking lot at night with her, taking her to the movie, knowing that there could be some, jerk out there that's ready to jump. But I can be diligent about that, but I can still go in and relax and breathe and watch the movie. I mean, there's a time and a place.
Yeah. And
That's a good
sometimes
point.
anxiety is not always negative or bad. Sometimes I'm so anxious because of the unknown. The unknown brings a lot of anxiety for me. And that's not necessarily a bad place to be. I respond in a certain way when I'm anxious. When it's deeper and I'm feeling all these feelings and I'm fearful, being able to name my fear, I think, can be very helpful. I'm afraid to do this, or I'm afraid that that's going to happen. And sometimes just naming it can be helpful.
I usually know what I'm afraid of, but man, after Dad died, I had this almost kind of panicked feeling in my stomach, and I didn't know what it was, and it was my stomach afraid to release my grief. And finally, when it exploded in an inappropriate moment in time, which I could not control, I realized, okay, grief is not exactly like I thought it was, but it was fear. I was scared. I knew that feeling, and I was so afraid of the power of my own pain.
But I think we're all like that to some point, Bert. I really do.
Thank you.
I mean, some can, mourn right away. Their grief just blurts out. And then there's others that contain it just for so long. And like you said, it comes out at the wrong time. But there's nothing wrong with any of that.
Yeah, it's grief's a tough thing. And I think that when you put people in a room together like us, or like a CPE group or a church committee, I mean, you've got every single person in that room is afraid at some level about several things. And most everybody in that room is probably also going to be grieving something, and it might be recent. And people carry the pain and the fear with them. And what we're trying to establish, I think, in CPE, and I hope in this group and in other contexts too for our church, is that we don't have a perfectly safe space for you to be you, but we have a safe enough space for you to experiment with being you. and being less afraid and knowing that the people here are not going to do you wrong on purpose. That you can trust the folks here enough that there's not some sort of ulterior motive or agenda, hidden agenda, but only that you grow and that you let us love you.
Yeah. And when someone, gets the nerve to do that, I usually encourage my students and thank them for having the courage to speak up and say what's on your heart, and for trusting the group enough to share what you just did, to say that you didn't like
It takes
what was
courage.
said. It takes that.
It's
and I
huge.
think affirming that makes a whole lot of difference.
For sure.
Mhm.
Appreciate the comments over there from you, Jonah. Those were hilarious and terrifying. And I appreciate everybody else. Is there anyone else where we've gone over? Is there someone else that has?
Kia's not really spoken. She did alert us to Jonah's
Hey,
comments, but I don't think
Kia, give us your words of radio wisdom. What you got to say?
No pressure or anything.
I know, right? Thank you, Mike. Well, first, Patricia, kudos to you. I loved your diagram. However, I am torn. And the reason being is because one thing that really struck me is, if on one side, yes, understanding your fear can be helpful, but in your knack of being fearful in that moment is also about your reaction and your response now imposing fear on someone else, and then their reaction and response. Now we have a complete domino effect. Exactly, a complete domino effect.
Now you got to spin.
Right. So I think it's really important on how we approach that whole love and being expressive and your response on speaking up and speaking out, because speaking up and speaking out for one who's in a fearful state can also look like aggression, right? So that aggression now is going to be taken in on someone else's behalf as being fearful, and now they may fold or they may flee, and now you don't know what you've just how you yourself have just impacted someone else's life. So I think it's
Wow, very true.
Yeah, so it's sort of like being able to stand over above the diagram and see how others are experiencing their own fear as you experience your own.
absolutely.
Because you can get triggered into a cycle of misunderstanding, and you're being truthful, but they're hearing aggression.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yep.
and that happens sometimes. That happens.
We can always count on her to do that, Mike. Why do you try to stop her? Why?
Well, obviously it didn't.
No pressure. This is how she performs under pressure. Listen.
All right, I got it now. I got it.
That's a really good point that you raised, Kia.
Oh my gosh,
yeah,
yes.
It can. One response can trigger another
Yeah.
very easily.
You guys have been awesome tonight. Share this once it's finished. I think it takes just a few minutes to finish recording, but share her diagram, man. Share it.
Yes.
You don't know who it's going to save. It may actually save somebody in a situation to have this insight.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think like our group here, we can develop groups that can be safe places too.
Yeah.
Yep.
I feel like this is a safe place for me. I can talk and share as I want to, and I feel very comfortable. And I think that's one thing I learned through your diagram, is that we need to develop safe places for other people too.
Right.
Be able to, to work through things in their own time.
Well, it does take courage to get on here and talk live on Zoom and know that it's being recorded sort of forever. It does take a certain amount of moxie to do that. So kudos to you guys for that. On the other hand, I had somebody say that they wish that we did more stuff in person at Owl Rock. Something else during the week where we actually were physically together getting to know one another. Because this is more of while it's personal, it's also more of a study on Wednesday nights.
And then have some food.
It's a panel discussion. Oh yeah, put all that. I took off some weight. I put it back on because we get But you understand what I'm saying? I think that something's lost in our not being physically together sometimes. People
Yeah.
sometimes don't really feel like they're getting to know somebody unless they're in the room with them. So that's just something to ponder. We may need to do something additional to this.
We can have Gene driving in and Dale driving in every week.
That would be good. Or we could do this together. We could do like Gene does and do this together at the church and then do it on live. Yeah, do Zoom and live. Yeah,
hybrid model.
just do it from there instead of from here and invite anybody who wants to come.
Yeah.
And we could try that. Gino's got a good model on Wednesday morning.
Yeah.
And
you
I'm very willing to drive.
Come on.
And that Mustang, burn.
Your motor run and
You have a Mustang, do you? You have like a
Charger? What is
Camaro or something.
Got a Camaro, right?
that?
I have a Camaro.
I think you
Yeah, I
have two, don't
didn't
you?
think it was a Mustang.
You
No.
have 2 Camaros?
I have a Camaro and a Blazer.
Oh, at one time you had 2 very fast looking cars.
they're both
I have a-
Chevys.
It's an Impala. I had a very nice Impala, but my Camaro's 6.2 liter, 455 horses, and I can get
That
there
means
pretty quick.
nothing to me.
I have 4 horses and I'm impressed.
But I can fix a mailbox.
Yes, you can.
Never mind.
If you're really in trouble, you get in my Camaro and we can flee rapidly.
It's no folding in that.
No,
Yeah, but I want to drive.
no.
I'm gonna get on Gino's horse.
I've had it up to 140.
Y'all, thank you so much. I hope you have a great
Thank you.
Thank you.
Patricia, thank you so much.
Yes, that is
Thank you,
fantastic.
Patricia.
Patricia.
Yeah.
Spread the word on this.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Pat.
Thank you, Patricia.
Yes.
Thank you
All
all.
right.
Bye, everybody.
Appreciate you.
Bye,
Night,
everybody.
Pastor Dale.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Everybody.
Good
Bye,
night,
Mike.
everybody.
Good
Bye,
night.
Gene.
Bye-bye.